We've been talking about it. The next generation is coming. We're going to see a shift. And, there's a famous line, the king is dead, long live the king. So we are back from Monterey, and if you are living under a rock, you don't know what that is, but it is arguably the mecca of the car collector world. What started probably 40 years ago, 30 years ago as a very fun weekend is now, you could say, the cornerstone of the hypercar world, supercar world, and classic car market. And there's a lot to talk about. I think we have a bunch of topics to talk about. The online, I was actually just quoted in a Bloomberg article talking about the collector car market. So I know we've had a ton of questions from all of our fans, enthusiasts, collectors about where the market is today, what transpired. And listen, we aren't the smartest guys in the world, but I think we're there. We've seen things. We've talked to a lot of people. I'm going to say a few things that are controversial. So it might shock you. It might shock all of you.
I'm usually the guy that says controversial stuff, so I'm looking forward to this.
But I think, we have, to get into this, we have been talking about the next generation of collecting for 10 years. When we first opened, people used to make fun of us and, say the cars you're dealing in aren't classic cars or collectible cars. And, we've been talking about it. The next generation is coming. We're going to see a shift. And, there's a famous line, the king is dead, long live the king. And it's this term to basically when a king has died and they're bringing in a new monarch, I think we're here. I think the old generation, the old guard, it's proven this weekend, did not show up. It did not show up at the auctions. It did not show up in the market. And there's an obvious shift that has happened. It happened this weekend. I wouldn't call it a bloodbath for 50s and 60s cars, but definitely it was not strong. Where on the flip side, 80s cars, 90s cars, and definitely a few specific cars were just tremendously strong. What were your surprises from the weekend?
So I think, just to add to what you said before, I think the conditions were ripe. I think we have, in a political year, in a year where you have interest rates and some financial headwinds, I think the time has now come where you have real clarity on where the market's going, because what I would call fake or discretionary money that's been flooding the market is beginning to go away. We're starting to get a really good snapshot of what this market's looking like. And I agree with you 100%. You're seeing the shift now. You're seeing where real money, I'm going to call it real money, is going. And there were some surprises for me. On the positive end, the 550 Maranellos kind of go against my mantra of collectability. They made more of them than 500. There's over, well over 1,000 cars, I think 2,300 or 2,800 cars in the line. And to see those cars do over $400,000, two of them, right? One came close to 400, and one was 412, I think. I'm going off from memory.
Actually, one of our old cars, our black low mileage car.
Oh, yeah.
Did a big number.
So to see the fact that, it wasn't an anomalous two guys chasing one car, that there seems to be this shift into utility, into the modernization of the collectible car. That's the pleasant surprise. I think that's what we've been talking about. So to see it come to fruition is validating, but it also means that that shift is here, because on the flip side of that, we saw some pretty disappointing numbers in mainly the 50s and 60s, kind of the stable old guards, the cars that would be the premier cars at every auction that the crowds would gather because they would pull the big numbers. And now the opposite happened. They were going, there were some low estimate sales. I was surprised to see that the California Spiders, which were always kind of the go-to cars for the big kind of showcase auction cars, did not perform well.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I think those were really the two most surprising things for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think to me, obviously the price, there's a few cars that just blew me away. One being the LM002, the Lamborghini truck that did over $700,000, unique color, definitely did very well. The Diablo 6.0, the Diablo SV, some of the Diablos all trading over $700,000. Again, these are all world record numbers for mileage in condition.
Mileage condition, but to your point again, specific colors.
Yes.
So whereas I think just 2 or 3 years ago in the 50s or 60 variation cars, people were buying on provenance and investability. And now you're seeing the younger generation, and hey, I want the car, I'm a collector, I'm an investor, but man, I want the cool color car.
Yes.
That speaks to me. And I think the other surprising car was the yellow Scuderia. I was actually in the room, which, by the way, the energy in the room on Saturday night was incredible.
Yep.
You had a lot of more modern cars for a Saturday night. Typically, you'd have the bigger, older, and some pre-war stuff, and there was a much more robust run of modern cars, and there was multiple people in the room chasing this car past what I thought the value was, and I'm not sure if it broke a record, but we're near a record.
Oh, 450 or 460?
475.
Wow.
For a nice low mileage, but great color Scuderia.
Yes.
So I think that is more indicative of youth than some of, and not to be critical of the older investor, but they kind of looked at things a little more black and white, a little more technical.
And I think it's funny. I think I've found that the younger generation also as well is very, very educated. They know exactly what they want. They know the numbers. It's very impressive to me. And to look around the room as well, see very young guys, younger than myself, by far, is very cool. It's cool to see that excitement around those cars. I think another car that we have to talk about is it's definitely at auction. I believe it's a world record at auction, but $5.5 million for the US F50, which is a massive number. Cars have sold for more, obviously, with lower miles, off market. We know that.
Yep.
But for an 8,000 mile car, it's a big number.
It's a big number. I mean, the other thing is that car was a repaint. I mean, and again, I think that's indicative of the youthful buyer. Is like, look, I don't care. I want the car perfect.
Yep.
I'm more accepting of something like a repaint. That would be a huge penalty for that car.
Yeah.
Just even a year ago.
Yeah.
So I think the market gets set. I think the other thing I noticed, which I really was encouraged by, was we started to get used to a lack of emotion in the auction rooms. It was very technical. It was very businesslike, which I understand. You're buying these very expensive vehicles for investment. But there was emotion. Scuderia, 4 or 5 guys in the room. It was actually fun because you had guys that were, I want the car. The hands were going up really hard, and a couple of guys were standing up and almost yelling their bids. And I think if that's where the market's going, there's excitement and emotion coming back into the market, which I felt like we were losing a little bit of.
And you made a statement about color. I mean, it's apparent there was 2 Countach examples that sold that struck me. One was shocking. It was a white 87 or 88, 5,000 QV. Whoever owns the car today, please put the correct badging on it. That car's been running around with a 5000 S badge, driving me nuts. So fix the badging. But imagine, even with the wrong badging, 9,000 kilometers, it still brought 805,000 or 803,000. So big number. But again, it's because it's white. It's iconic. Everybody always asks for a white Countach or anything like that. And then the Anniversary, which looked to be a nice car. I didn't inspect it. Nice service history. Over 720,000. Again, white on red, low miles. So Countach just seems strong. And then on the flip side, when you have these 50s and 60s cars that are a little bit shaking, I think the next generation, in my gut, it starts at the Miura and it starts at the Daytona. Daytona prices seemed a little bit strong again, and Miura prices were very strong. And it's interesting.
I'm going to disagree with you on that. I don't think there's a starting point. I think there's a transcendence that happens. Again, it's emotion. Because if you look at the segment in the 60s, I think a lot of the cars that you can count on to be the stable cars that will always pull money, they're getting weaker. But for instance, a 275, a 4-cam, it feels like it transcends. You do have younger guys that understand how special and the beauty of the car. Some of them didn't do well this weekend.
Yes.
But one of them was very high mileage, and it still pulled $3 million. The other one was kind of a plain, tired red car. It no-sailed. But you're still seeing strength there. And I think the Miura and the Daytona are still cars that will transcend because they're so special as far as design and how iconic they are. So I think even as the market continues to shift, there's still going to be these go-to cars that will stay strong.
Yeah, I will agree with you to a certain extent. I'll agree to disagree. I think there's always icons. So
Yeah.
like 275 is an icon, and it's a usable car. It's actually very nice to drive.
Yep.
So I think usability is a big portion of where the market's going. I think it's also the reason that race cars didn't do that well. And I'm a huge fan of some of the race cars.
Yeah, no, the Porsche GT1. Listen, that shocked everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes, people that have gone there, like we've been going there for over 10 years, you do recognize that sometimes placement, the day that, maybe the night that it's running, if it runs on a certain night where people are still coming in, maybe there's not as much activity or emotion, but I thought the Porsche GT1 stopped just short of saying shocking. That car fell $2 to $3 million short of where it should have sold.
Wow.
So, and it can't really say because it's a race car, because we have seen a shift even towards race car investability. That's gone up.
Yes.
In the last 2 years, a lot of focus on good race cars with provenance. So
Yes.
that was a surprising result. I would have to see maybe some repeatability in that segment to be worried.
I would agree with you that there is one big problem that I think, and this goes for all events, and listen, you have a culture now that is around experiences and around events. The manufacturers have chased down Pebble Beach. There's no more Geneva Auto Show. They're launching new cars at these events. I mean, so the schedule is so busy.
Yeah.
And you have auction houses adding days and auction houses adding cars. It's almost a little too much in some ways.
It is, and I think, just to shift focus a little bit, like you mentioned, when you go to the Quail now, which I think the Quail was kind of just a car show for many years, and now it's grown into...
It was always a car show with very good food.
Yeah, it was a car show and
Very
a
good
culinary
food.
event.
Yes.
But now, suddenly when you go in, you feel like it's a legitimate factory-backed event where
Yes.
they're, like you said, releasing cars. What I really noticed this year was the emergence of the Resto Mod class, the emergence of these newer supercars. Maybe the argument could be too many, too fast. We'll see. There's
way too many. If I see another Porsche 911 Resto Mod, I'm gonna jump from the second floor here. It's absurd. I don't even know all of the brands now.
But so the execution level is incredible, which is sad because you're going to have companies that maybe don't quite make it that have made incredible cars.
Yes.
But I think it lends itself to the fact that not only is Pebble Beach, I think, the premier event globally of all the events.
Yeah.
I think you're starting to see companies cater to a younger, more affluent, more active buyer, which is why the Resto Mod, I think, is taking off. There are still guys that buy and put away and bubble wrap the cars, but most of these guys now it's utility. I want to use it. I want to drive it. I want to show it off. I'm going to valet park it at my restaurant, which is why I think we've now seen this carry over to the newer cars.
Yeah, I think what's most interesting to me, and I didn't realize this till after, because there were so many Porsche Resto Mods at the Quail, but Porsche actually unveiled a one-off, you could call it a Resto Mod.
I thought it was a Gunther. I got to be honest. I walked by. I'm like, why is there a Gunther on their stage? I'm like, oh, it's not. It's
their
actually
own
one
car.
of the Resto Mods.
So a 993 Speedster.
Yep.
Super cool car.
Really cool car.
And you sort of want to say, okay, wow, is this how the manufacturers are? Is this the future? We talked about that recently. Like, I believe it is part of the future. We had a great time in the Roof CTR anniversary. Roof unveiled a sick the off-road car, which is so cool. So there's definitely a following there and an excitement around that.
Do you think that was Porsche making a statement? Because
there's no question.
Okay, it's like, hey, you guys want to do this? We're going to do it better.
We can do it too, and we can do it better. Yeah. And I guess the question is, where will the manufacturers, will they get started? Will they get into that? It'll be a really interesting moment to see.
Yeah, I think so. And then there was other cool thing. I don't know if there was a 550 Resto Mod, which I thought was beautiful and really well done. But again, maybe the market's starting to flood a little bit.
My argument to that, and with some of the Resto Mods, is, for like the 550, 550 is already a great car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a usable car, it's a drivable car. 550 Barchetta has carbon everywhere. A world speed record car has the roll bar with the sport seats. Honestly, I don't know how you make a 550 better.
Actually, it's a great
that
point.
much better.
You know what? It's a beautiful, aesthetically, it's a beautiful car.
But I think it's over $1 million too, as well. So that's part of my argument sometimes is like, Does it need it?
Well, maybe more now because the donor cars, I guess, were 150 grand probably when the project started. Now, two results over 400,000 changes that market a little bit too, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I always question is, do we actually need it with certain cars? Like, hey, a Diablo 6.0 is an amazing car. You could daily drive it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
AC is great. So, that's always my, take on that. But I think overall you see this shift. You see things moving. It has happened. It's not a myth anymore. And also, I mean, I think it brings up a great point. We have never had a public result of a manual LP 640. People have told us for years, maybe some of our pricing is crazy and you'll never get that. But manual LP 640 Roadster, Oro Adonis, a one-off color for a Roadster, traded just under 1.4. This is a world record for a public sale. And this is a car that, a few years ago, we signed a bill of sale on around 800 or something like that. So,
and you're right. I think people have always said, oh, you guys, you're just trying to make a market. And as complimentary as that is, I think a car going to auction that we weren't associated with, pulling that number is validating.
Yes.
It shows that, we have a kind of a pulse and understanding that that market was going in that direction. I think the next one that runs is going to be 1.5. I think.
Yeah, it's possible.
Not many cars, obviously.
Yes.
And
you're talking about 10 cars in the U.S., another handful throughout the world. So, trying to get another one today is almost impossible.
Yeah. So overall health of the market, I'll ask you the question now. Overall health of the market, I mean, we have to acknowledge a little bit of headwinds. I think they said that we were down 8%.
8%.
Overall in the auction house. But, we live in a little bit different end of the world right now.
Listen, I think all in all, if you think of the current world economy, you think of where we came off of with a massive stock market scare 2 weeks ago, election year. You think of all these things, and you think of all the cars that traded on one weekend and all the auctions, being 8% off is
expected.
It's expected.
Yeah,
I don't see it as a trigger, as a sign. I think we're just seeing interest change. And listen, there's a lot of well-educated money out there that are looking for usable cars, 550 Maranello, later Diablos, that hold their value, that they can have fun with, great colors, great pieces. It's happening now. And I think also people are, I think there's 3 generations chasing, a specific generation of cars. And I think, yes, there will all be icons that hold their value or semi-hold their value. There's certain iconic cars that will forever do well, but I think we see an overall shift. And I think considering globally where we are today in the world and all of the uncertainty, I think the market's actually fairly strong considering everything that's going on and the amount of cars that's sold in one weekend.
Yeah, I think, and we keep seeing that number go up, and we keep thinking it can't go up, and it does. And then keeping in mind, there's other large auctions now throughout the year. We have Scottsdale coming up in January.
It's wild.
And then our event in Miami, which is going to be another, hopefully another
great event. And then at
any
given point, you have Bring a Trailer selling 700 cars.
Yeah.
and all of the online auctions and cars and bids. And so it's definitely interesting to see.
Yeah, so the overall market healthy, just maybe more realistic now, right?
I think people are way more realistic. I think the speculators that's all gone. I think you have very well-educated decisions, people that are discerning overall.
Yeah.
And I think we are going to continue to see this trend towards 80s, 90s, and early 2000s cars explode. That's my opinion.
And like I said, emotion. I'm really happy to see emotion back in the market. I felt like it was kind of going away a little bit, but just to see excitement and emotion, and sometimes you make bad decisions with emotion, but whatever, man. That's what made this business fun. That's what I think makes the auctions a lot of fun.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. Well, we would love to hear your guys' comments, questions, negativity, whatever you want. Throw it in. We always look forward to it. You want to make fun of my fashion sense or Herschel pushing a low-tech across the stage. That'll be for a separate video. But it's
called trophy planking. I invented a new thing.
Definitely chime in. Thank you guys again for all your love and support, and we will see you soon.
You guys are the best.